Mic check, mic check. This is Jonathan Allen in the clubhouse. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Hey, everybody, it's Derek Young checking in the clubhouse. Hey.
Hello, everyone. This is Dana Blake here in the clubhouse. Do you hear me?
And we have a very special guest.
Yes, Malia Lazu, everybody.
Check it.
Do you hear me? I am here.
Yes, it
I am
is.
here.
Live and in full effect.
So you all already know that Leadership Brainer is all around creating access and support systems for underserved and underrepresented communities. This podcast is a piece of it. And, we just really want to ensure that we can uplift our communities, that we can empower our communities, that we know that we can be anywhere, any place, doing whatever we want to do. So this conversation is important because it's around diversity in leadership, and I'm really excited about it. So Jonathan, could you kick us off and talk about our supporters a bit?
Yes, and so we are super grateful that the work around increasing access to master's and doctoral degrees for underrepresented communities as a gateway to management level and leadership roles in the workforce to close wealth gaps and opportunity gaps is the mission of Leadership Brainery, and we have a host of community stakeholders who invest in our work to make it possible. And one in particular that I want to highlight today, who is one of the sponsors of this conversation, is the New Commonwealth Fund. Yes, which Malia Lazu is one of the founding members of the New Commonwealth Fund, and it is just befitting that you be here today and that we be having this conversation about diversity and leadership. So shout out to New Commonwealth Fund. Everyone go check out their website, the amazing work that these 19 Black executives, Black and brown executives in Massachusetts came together to start this fund to uplift and invest in BIPOC ran and serving organizations in our communities. And so we're really grateful and looking forward to having this conversation today.
Me too.
Yes, yes.
Speaking of our special guest, what an honor. A serial entrepreneur, so I've heard, so I can see in the work of Boston, the founder and CEO of the Lazu Group, as well as a guest lecturer at MIT Sloan. What an amazing opportunity. Malia Lazu, thank you for coming.
Yes.
It's so great to be here. And I have to say, I feel like I was saying that, do you hear me? I feel like was our first love child and maybe have many.
Yes.
And Derek was there to help us midwife. And just to see it continue to grow and to be living, and this idea and to be serving young people and serving Leadership Brainery is just, my heart expands.
Yes, so amazing. And this conversation is about to be so dynamic, and we hope everyone that you buckle your seatbelts.
That's right, because I have stuff to say, as you heard, No, but I mean, it is great to be here and just to say a little bit about who I am and the work I do. So I identify as an organizer. I'm an old school community organizer, but in that value structure and in understanding that that's who I am, I have gone on this journey that's taken me to so many places. So I graduated from Emerson College. Yes. Shout out to Back Bay, Boston. Or I'm timing myself because Emerson is now in downtown Crossing. Back in the 90s, Emerson was all around here. Young people. And I started my first nonprofit while I was a sophomore in college, and it's called Mass Vote. It's still around. If you want to get involved in civics, you can check it out. And that's really what sent me on my journey, But on my journey of being an organizer, I became a bank president, a lecturer at MIT Sloan in their technology, entrepreneurship, innovation studies, also known as TIES. And so really, I say no matter where I am, I'm organizing, I'm deconstructing power, I'm loving on those who are excluded, especially Black and brown people in my community, and how I identify. And so, so that's who I am. And I'm looking forward to talking to y'all today.
Do you hear me?
Do you hear me? Diversity and we're having to do it.
Come on. Yes. Diversity and leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think we should just kick it off.
Let's do it.
And let's just open it up.
Mhm.
I would love to hear everyone's experience and understanding of what is diversity, but also what is leadership,
Mhm.
and how do those two concepts intersect.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
You wanna kick us off?
I'll kick us off. So I look at diversity as a scientific fact,
Hmm.
right? Diversity happens. It's not something we do, right? Evolution makes us diverse, right? And so what you do with it is where the leadership part comes in, right? So it's one thing to say like there are Black people in the world. It's another thing to say that there are Black people in leadership,
Mhm.
right? And so I think like it's really in how you define that leadership part that lets me know if I know you believe in the diversity part,
Mhm.
right? And so when I look at diversity and leadership, I'm looking for power. Who is holding power?
Mhm.
And are they diverse in lived experience, which happens naturally in this country?
That's really powerful. And go a little deeper though on the dichotomy between around how one defines leadership. So there's power. What are other ways in which you've seen institutions define leadership that's not necessarily power?
So I think a great example that you'll see is that you see diverse leadership in companies a lot, in positions that are never C-suite ladders,
Mhm.
right? So government affairs.
Mhm.
And so you could be running a government affairs division, right? You're a leader, but do you have power?
Exactly.
Right? Like, do you have power?
Are you a
I
decision
will-
maker?
Are you right? Are you a decision maker? And you know, when I became a bank president, that was the conversation that the CEO and I had, because he was like, you're not gonna be a DE&I person.
Exactly.
He's like, I need to get you in a place where you have power.
Okay.
And so I was a C-suite executive overseeing marketing, facilities, communications, corporate social responsibility. Enough departments that I could make whole changes without asking anybody.
Mhm.
Right, so if I decided that facilities was gonna, do something different in
Exactly.
diversity, I could just make that happen because the
Right.
head of facilities he had to report to me for his
Right.
evaluation.
Mhm.
Right, for his bonus recommendations, I was doing those things.
Exactly.
But also on the other side, I had a $1 billion P&L, right? I was a bank president for the Eastern Massachusetts region.
Yeah.
So I had branches and, I could introduce and pilot products. And I mean, everything had to go through compliance, right? But I didn't have to go through a lot of white people to get approval.
Mhm.
And I
Do you hear
think,
me?
do you hear me? So I think that's like, and not that having, Black heads of government affairs is bad.
Mhm.
It's not bad. We should be leading everything. We're really dope.
Do you hear me?
But, do you hear me? But if we're talking about diversity and leadership, then I want to talk about us being in true power positions where our diversity actually matters, where, we've all been in rooms before where, folks are like I was in a room at, some business pitch contest thing.
Mhm.
And this woman was basically pitching like the next version of Carol's daughter. Like, and it was a really interesting idea and it was like all organic and she wanted to, actually like locally farm something. Like it was this very interesting concept and creating this premium product, right? So and I was the only, woman of color in the room in this group. And, people were like, well, is Black hair care an industry really? Right? Like, and they wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like
They should assume.
They should assume, if they thought about us.
Right, exactly.
They would make assumptions.
Right, exactly.
Right. But they weren't even think like, they were like, what's the difference?
Right.
Right, and so then I said, I on average probably spend $400 to $600 on my hair every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's just me.
Right.
And I don't switch out a lot, like I'll rock my hair, you know what I mean? Like, I try to get this going for about 8 weeks, 10 weeks, you try to hold it out, right? And I was like, and that's like, that's including
I was the services, the products,
the services,
people,
the products, right, the bonnets, the
The
pillowcase,
All of it.
my pocket hurt.
exactly, right?
The sleeping on one side.
Oh my gosh, and
Not
like,
in your way.
and like now with my lashes, I'm trying to sleep on my back, I'm like, oh God. And so, and all of a sudden, like, they were like, and, so obviously, like, and she had a good business model, everything, like, she was able to go on, but if I wasn't there, and if I wasn't there to say it, like, she may not have gotten this opportunity, right, to pursue her business, in that way.
Do you hear me?
Mhm.
Representation.
Representation, right, and right, like, and in those rooms, like, because,
Exactly.
because they had a lot of folks who were, of color, who were helping the entrepreneurs, and
Right.
but who's making the decision on whose entrepreneurs get what?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Right,
So-
like, and so, yeah, so that's what I mean, the dichotomy, like,
Right.
and we want to celebrate it at every level,
Exactly.
but we want to recognize the levels we want to be at.
Exactly. So the title and topic for today's diversity and leadership. So as maybe a subtitle, we're framing it as also diversity and decision making.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Mhm.
Diversity and power.
That's it.
Right.
Right. Diversity and resource allocation.
Mhm.
And resource allocation, because
Exactly.
that's what we're talking about,
Right. Right.
right? Because we don't talk about leadership in many other aspects of society. Now, we may have spiritual leaders, right? We may have a pastor or priest or, a guru, or, that leads us in certain ways.
Right.
We may have a matriarchal family or a patriarchal family, right? But hierarchy,
Exactly.
decision-making
Right.
becomes very fluid in society, right? Grandma gets to do it, right? Like, in my family, right, it's the oldest person, right? Like, gets to make the decision.
Yeah.
And we all go along, that's where we're going for Christmas, right?
Exactly. We gonna be there.
And we gonna be
Yeah.
there, right? And who's cooking what and who's bringing
Exactly.
what. But in work, it is about, right, power becomes about money, about resource allocation, right? So it's actually not a natural way, right? Because when we think about power, it actually fluctuates in your relationships, right? It's not always like,
Exactly.
oh, well, it's the person with the most money that I'm the closest to.
Exactly.
It's the
Right.
person who helps me the most that I'm the, right? Like,
Exactly.
and anyway, so now I'm totally getting off track too.
Yeah.
So your question about that, but.
No, that is a really important point. And you said something earlier that I'm like, okay, well, we need to talk about this. And you said like the DEI role doesn't have power or decision making. Why is that though?
So I would amend that to not be so absolutist. And what I
Okay.
will say is a majority of DE&I roles sit
Mhm.
under HR.
Yeah.
And so again, decision-making power.
Mhm.
Now, like one of our clients, State Street, their DE&I person, Paul Francisco,
Mhm. Another leadership runner.
Yeah.
and another founder of the New Commonwealth
Yeah.
Fund.
Shout out to the
Wow.
one again.
He sits in the C-suite,
Yeah.
right? He reports directly to the CEO.
Mhm.
Now that's power,
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
is, that's true.
right? Like, so
Mhm.
it's not that every
Yeah,
position,
that makes sense.
but it's that I will, where your DE&I position
Yeah.
sits,
Mhm.
lets me know how dedicated you are. And I would
Yeah.
guess, and I don't know if this is true,
Mhm.
but if they were to go back and redesign Paul's position, I don't know. And I think they've even changed it from like DEI to IDEA, or it's a cultural position.
Mhm.
Right? It's a user experience position, it's an internal employee position. And so, yeah, so that,
Okay, that's good.
but I do want to be clear
Yeah.
that just because you have a DE&I person
Mhm.
does not mean that person has power. Like the
Yeah.
first
Right.
question I would ask is, where does that person sit
Mhm.
on the hierarchical structure? How much budget does that
Mhm.
person have?
Mhm.
And how much convening power?
Mhm.
So, I don't have to be the big dog, but if everyone knows when I say we need to circle up,
Mhm.
we circle up,
Mhm.
that's cool. I can be the ombudsman,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I need to have some of that. So what you end up seeing is DE&I positions that end up putting together trainings and
Yeah.
things like that.
Exactly,
And
right.
again, it's all good. Like, I don't want to knock all of it, but also that DE&I person, especially if it's a person of color, has a lot to offer, a lot more to offer, and getting them higher up
Exactly.
allows them to do that. You know,
Exactly.
like having budgets for your employee resource groups, paying your employee resource groups to
Yeah.
participate.
Mhm.
At least the chairs, right? They
Exactly.
spend time doing it.
Yeah.
Having your DE&I person have control over all of their budgets, right? Like you just, they need leverage.
And is this the type of consulting that you offer companies who are thinking about how to transform their cultures and environments?
Yes. So we, what we really like to, we like to say we move companies from intention to impact. So, we haven't met a company that doesn't have a good intention about DE&I, right? I mean, they wouldn't be calling me if they didn't anyway, but most companies are like, we're dedicated to diversity, equity, inclusion, and here's $100 million, and look at us, we're not racist. And then you look at their numbers and you're like, okay, I totally get you're not racist. But what's interesting is that all these people up at the top, not only are white, but are straight and are men, and your succession planning are straight, white, and men, or maybe one or two white women, or a gay guy, or a black guy, or but most of it. So let's not call it racism.
Exactly.
Let's put that aside. But now, can you let us look into your culture? Because that's why all these intentions that you have don't actually turn into the numbers you want to see in management. And again, does everyone want to see these numbers? No, but a majority of them do. I haven't talked to a CEO that was like no CEO has ever said, will we be hiring underqualified people? Right. No, now middle managers have asked me that question, but every CEO, they see the writing on the wall, they can count, and they know what it takes to lead in changing times. And so we really try to get out of this idea of training, yes, data, let's look at it, but then let's get qualitative data, right? Because at the end of the day, your middle managers make or break this, and they're bought in, right? They've been working 20 years to try to get up into that C-suite, and now you're changing the goalposts, and you're doing it because you need to hire Black people or gay people, or to them it's a well, you can see me, that's right, we're on camera. Right, it's put it in quotes, right? Not understanding that some of the largest wealth creation has happened within gay couples. And so if you want to do some wealth management, why don't you bring in some good gay wealth managers who are in all the ecosystem, who can get all the folks on to be planning these futures. Right, and let's look at that stats, to drive your business. So that's what we do around culture, and it's because it drives business. I say all the time, I was in nonprofit work. This isn't charity for me. What equity and capitalism means is that we all get to make money together. That's what I'm interested in. So I'm not interested in you giving me charity, because I'm about to make it so that you're making so much more money, and so everyone needs to be getting Christmas, right? Because you're going to be entering markets quicker, smoother, better, flyer, faster, right? You're not going to have the reputation risks of having that Starbucks moment or whatever it might be, because there's going to be Black people in the room being like, we don't want to know about race together, not in the morning at our coffee, right? Or you're going to have folks be like, yeah, so just the pride flag when you have no, gay representation in your product.
What we do.
That's what we don't do. So, put in Kylie Jenner and Pepsi. Yeah, no, that's not going to work, right? You have the people in the room who are empowered enough to say, this does not reach us. And thank you for thinking about it. We appreciate the flag on the tires. But we would actually like to see Ford Motor Company offer benefits and
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But-
Exactly.
So why don't we make that announcement in Pride?
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
why don't we talk about the leadership that we have throughout the Ford Motor Company?
Exactly. We're paying for our employees to go back and get their graduate degrees.
Exactly,
So they
exactly,
can
right,
level up.
right, something like that, right?
Exactly.
We don't need pride flag rims.
Exactly, right.
We appreciate, thank you, appreciate it.
Mhm, mhm.
And then we gotta pay a premium for that too, because we want pride flag rims.
Exactly.
But, so let's just, like, why don't we announce, right, the graduate program that we're gonna be doing?
Yeah.
With Glisten and young people and scholarships
Right.
and blah, blah. And then the mentorship of the folks we already have in the company.
Exactly.
So that these young LGBTQ folks come in, we're already, been there, did that, folks who are like, now let's make you be a strong corporate guy.
Exactly.
Right.
Right?
That's so strong. I think one thing that we talk often about with companies is also equity, right? And we can't have this conversation without talking about equity. And I think what a lot of companies and institutions struggle with is sharing that they're committed to equity, but they're scared to actually implement equity. And equity means giving more to those with their backs up against the wall.
Reparative.
Reparatively, because it's not-
Yeah,
It's not more that you don't deserve, it's
Right.
actually,
exactly.
there's still a deficit, technically.
Well, it's that I don't have because you
Yeah.
take
Because
it
you took-
away.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Right, and I
Yeah.
think, and that is what makes it hard, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're in a privileged position, and I get this, right? Like I can actually have empathy for this, right? Like when you're in a privileged position, equity can feel like a step down,
Yeah.
right? So if you've just been living your life, right? Like Johnny, straight guy, right? White guy, middle class guy, right? Or even working class guy, right? Like you can live through your life, like not fully getting your privilege. So you don't understand that you've only been competing with a third of the population, right? You don't understand that you got into schools that cared more about you because schools were actually built for you, not for us.
Right.
Right, and so all of a sudden we say like, well, we're now gonna take some of this money to help the schools that we've been closing, burning down. I mean, didn't even let them in.
Right. didn't let me.
For the first little bit of life, and some places still struggle too. It's like, well, but my kid was, well, no, your kid doesn't get to go there, right? And it becomes this thing where people who really wanna be well-intentioned start getting into scarcity mentality, even though they have nothing but abundance, but it doesn't feel like abundance, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
and to actually flip this story on its head, but it's such a perfect one for this moment was when I was working for Harry Belafonte, we brought a group of young Black and brown gang members at-risk youth, but a lot of them were in organized gangs, and we were trying to help them start legitimate businesses, right? Because the gang's just family, right? But when you give them just black market stuff, they're gonna have violence anyway. So we were trying to, and we were, doing different trainings, and we were bringing them around the country. Anyway, we brought them to Appalachia,
Okay.
right? So poor white folks.
Mhm.
And we brought them there because Appalachia was building supermax prisons, right? So they were getting an economy based on us and on the other side of this. And when we got there, these folks were poor, right? Like very, very poor. And so these supermax prisons were their economy. And as we, talked to them and what we saw was that even in oppression, right? Even in class, there's still the overseers.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're still the overseers and we're still the labor. Right? And so I think that it's hard for folks, right, to understand that what equity looks like is either growing the pie or giving us some of yours.
Exactly.
So y'all can make that decision because we can really make our own money if you just stop taking it.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
Right, we gonna be good, so, and maybe if we do a little bit of both, we have some reparations and you take your foot off our neck, we'll have an amazing thriving economy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my goodness, we can go so deep. We really can, because I know this is not on our list of questions, but Dana, we're gonna have to just circle back. So we mentioned reparations, and right now we're talking a lot about companies. Also leadership in our government, right? And so how have you felt in terms of the private industries in our relationship with the government? Where can we find synergy to really uplift our communities?
Okay, see, get us back, okay, get us back, because I told you, and I know what that was. We would sit and just do this for hours, we don't even need a microphone, we don't need cameras, we don't need an audience, we will do this alone, so sis, keep us on time, bring us back.
On time.
Okay, so first and foremost, I think that government, private industry, and civic, right? Let's call it the commons, right? The public commons, right? Where us, peoples, demos of the democracy, right? Those are your three sort of pillars of society that create shared agreements, right? Agreed consent, that's what we've all agreed to. Now, in this time, these pillars act and behave differently, right? So most of the time, the business aligns with government, and then they try to convince the commons.
Right.
But then there's times where the commons starts convincing government and business that stuff has to go down differently.
Yeah.
Right.
We're in one of those moments.
One of those moments right now.
That's
Right now.
We're in one of those moments right now today. And so what really has blown my mind is as we see the growing, irrelevance may be too strong of a word, but the ineffectualness of governments and nothing but a rollback of equity in government. What we're seeing is, because the commons is asking, right? So what we're seeing is business starting to come in and act as that buffer that I believe government for so long always has. And, I think a great example of this was the racial unrest and uprisings during Donald Trump, right? Because we never before, well, maybe before, but not in common history, have we had a president so willing to not even placate Black folks. Right, and so here we had these moments, George Floyd in particular, and we had a silent government. Right, yes, we had Nancy Pelosi and and the folks taking a knee, but we had no governmental leadership, right? There was no presidential address, right? I mean, even George Bush would have addressed that differently, right, than Donald Trump and others. And so the next thing you see Jamie Dimon taking a knee and putting out a picture of him with his hands up, taking like Colin Kaepernicking it, right? Now, do they believe this? But I think what they do believe is that the commons are restless.
Exactly.
And when the commons are restless, economies become unstable.
That's exactly.
Right, and looking at, shout out to Chris Smalls and the Amazon Labor Union and what's happening in Starbucks, right? Organizers are now, organizers are having success in a way, that it's almost hard to, when you have someone like a Barack Obama, right? Because it's hard to hold him as target.
Right.
Right, although I think we should have done it more, but that's for a whole nother, do you hear me?
Do you hear me?
But I get it, it was our first time, we were just waiting, what does Cat Williams say? We were hanging on any word, do you have something for us? Do you have something for us?
The first time, but not the last time.
That's right. The first time, and we learned, and so now we're like, what you got?
And so I do want to circle us back because I'm sitting here and I'm absorbing and learning so much. And this is why you're a lecturer. at MIT Sloan.
Mhm.
This is why you do this.
Mhm.
Some of the contexts that you're speaking within, I am receiving my MBA right now. So a lot of it I had context and was able to understand, but for the average person who may not be in the process of going to school right now, some of this market, the economy, these words they may be a little intangible, but I would love if you can speak to your experience at MIT and the graduate students that you're interacting with, and what the benefits of receiving an advanced degree from a school like MIT and how that can benefit our communities, because a lot of what we're talking about right now is the ways in which we're struggling. But what we want to also highlight is the way a graduate degree can combat all of this that we're experiencing, this unrest in the commons,
That's
and how
right.
we can address that.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad that you circled this back and even included the comments, because I think what we're seeing is that white supremacy isn't working anymore, right? Like the failure is actually on them, not us.
Thank you.
And that's what's coming to play right now, right? So it's getting hard for them, right? Because it's like, well, we need college degrees. Well, the most educated class is Black women right now. So go ahead, look for college degrees, right? Like, because we have them now, right? Like, and so, I was at MIT twice. First in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. And I want to give a shout out to that school as well, even though I'm going to talk about Sloan a little bit. But, I found DUSP for me as someone who very much didn't know that what I was doing in placemaking was urban planning, right? Like that didn't understand that. And I just find that program to be so amazing. So I also want to shout out DUSP and the collab, and everyone check that out if that's what you're into. So my time at Sloan has been great for a couple of reasons. One, we at Sloan and our ethos at MIT is that we're problem solvers, right? And that's what we do. And if you wanted this pen to become a robot, we take it to the media lab and it comes out a robot. Like that's basically what happens. And so it's a place where the word no doesn't exist a lot, right? Because again, we're problem solvers, we're achievers. There's always the answer. And so to come in with DE&I, something that Sloan is actually not an overachiever in, right? Sloan has one Black tenured professor. And it gives us such an opportunity to shape its efforts, right? Because again, we're problem solvers. So we're going to solve this problem now that we're focused on, right? Now that we see it's important. And what we also know, in order to solve this problem, our students are leading that, right? It's going to be our students that are going to tell us,
Do you hear me?
have we gotten this right or not?
Exactly.
And so the work that I get to do is, and I don't teach a lot because God bless the teachers. So I do like lecture series, I do things like that. And what I do is provide a place for our students to connect directly with the change makers in business and in government or in civic, right? So, we did the C-suite summit where we brought Rashad Robinson from Color of Change. We brought Corey Thomas from Rapid 7, right? We brought in folks who are wildly, wonderfully successful and successful with this heart ethos. Right? Successful with this knowledge, right? And that's what I love, because the students, this is what they want. And they love their other classes, and they need economics and they do need all of that. But what's gonna make them successful is being able to navigate that with the lens towards the 21st century demographic. And and what I love about our students of color, so I love all of our students equally, everyone is wonderful. What I hope that I provide for our students of color and our staff of color too, and our faculty of color, because we have admin folks who be holding us down, and that's where a lot of diversity at MIT sits. And I get it, because we hold folks down. I understand why you hire us to do that. But is to provide a space for them to be authentic and provide a space for them to come into these intimidating as hell halls and be themselves, and know that even though there's a whole lot of white ideas and white history and in the halls,
Right.
that in no way reflects what MIT needs today to succeed. And that's what you're bringing in.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about, especially, with our diverse students, is that like the affinity alumni groups, like come in and work with students, and like we're even like asked, well, I'm saying we're, because I'd be part of, I'd be hanging with them, like I'm a part of them now, even though I'm not an official Sloan alum, but we're even asked to like fund if folks need something, right? Like someone wants to do this study abroad,
Right.
like let's help them get there. But so the community of people of color at Sloan is a beautiful one, and it's one where folks look out for one another and really understand. And I facilitated conversation that I think you can probably find on the Sloan alumni YouTube or something, or we can probably find it and send it to you all. But where alumni were talking about how they might not have, like they don't have the white privilege, right? But they have the privilege of Sloan. And what they were pushing Sloan to do was to understand the difference, right? And understand that even Sloan has bias, and being upfront, and we had this whole conversation about it, and how, who gets invested, right, in at Sloan, right? What companies get investment, what companies, and then who goes out and then does a raise, right? And is obviously successful. So like, why weren't they, right? And those conversations happen at Sloan, and they need to happen at every institution, because unless you're at an HBCU, this is happening, right? Harvard isn't so much better than us, right? UCLA is Stanford, right? We're all in the institutional muck, right? Of institutional bias in higher education. That's what that's why I think folks should check out Sloan. Sloan we just opened our innovation headquarters, and the innovation economy we have decided is going to be where we will problem solve how we build diverse economies. It's an emerging economy. So we've literally built a whole center for it. And it's a center that's like nothing else. Like there's no floor hierarchy, like students can walk throughout the entire, students can see, it's this really beautiful space. Shout out to Dean Murray, Fiona Murray, Associate Dean for DE&I, the woman who brought me in as like,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Shout out to her.
I also want to mention that the business students at MIT, the Black business students, have a podcast now called The Kickback.
Okay.
And so go check out Malia's YouTube video, but then also make sure you check out The Kickback so you can hear about their lived experience as they get their MBA.
Yes, and for those who don't know, MIT Sloan School of Management is a member of Leadership Brainery. Do you hear me? And so, yes, if you're interested in obtaining your MBA, and there are a host of other master's degrees and doctoral degrees and certificates that Sloan offers, so check them out as well. So behooving you to go to leadershipbrainery.org and learn about Dear Future Colleague, where you can access our online platform to build relationships with recruiters at MIT Sloan, as well as begin tapping into mentorship and getting a chance to research a lot of the different degrees that MIT Sloan and our other member schools have to offer as well. So check out Dear Future Colleague for those resources, and shout out to MIT Sloan once again.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it. I want to be mindful of time, but I'm gonna throw another question in
Yeah,
there.
let's go.
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious to know, how does it benefit communities and the workforce if diverse talent had access and earned graduate degrees? We do have some statistics here that I want to also highlight that in North America right now, it's about 50-50. It's 50-50 are in CEOs or C-suites, and 50% are not, but they're all in positions of leadership. But I'm curious to know, does it make a difference? And for those who are hiring, are they looking for the experience? Are they looking for academic credentials? Does it matter?
Yeah, and if I can just give some extra to that too,
Yeah.
we have these degrees that can really help with your career mobility. and level up from a career perspective. But then you also have these industries where graduate degrees are absolutely required, like being an attorney, you have to go to graduate school, being a doctor, a medical provider, being a professor with a PhD. And so even when we think about those different industries and how gaining access to those degrees benefit our communities too.
Yeah, well, I think very deeply. No, so I mean, I think that graduate degrees are important because they are needed for leadership, right? Like they are that sort of quick way, right, to show like I have been vetted and a certain amount of knowledge in this industry. And so I think that that's important. Now, I do think that, and rightly so, right? We're having conversations of like, well, does an office manager, right, need a degree, right? And that's those are important questions because that's rightly so, right? And that office manager can get into a company and then can get maybe tuition reimbursement and get their degree or something like that, but higher education is so important for developing leadership, and I think like, even if you're not sure if like, oh, well, what degree do I need for my field? Like, you just do the higher ed, like just do the degree that you want because it doesn't like I think you were saying, like not all CEOs have MBAs, right? Like there are some CEOs who have higher degrees in law or, in other things because they wanted to just learn that, right? Like I think like communications degrees, right? Like great degrees to have, they will help you with leadership, and then being able to say you have a master's always helpful, right? But I think it's important to just remember that like it's the process of learning that makes you the leader, like not, and so like, like you asked, like, and like a degree at MIT, right? An MBA from Sloan. Yeah, that's right. That's an elite school, right? We're big, we're whatever. But not every MBA at Sloan is a CEO of a company.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like, so, just because you go to a great school, it doesn't mean you're gonna make it. And if you don't go to a great school, it doesn't mean you're not. And I think that's really important for folks. Like, it's the learning that matters, and it's the connections.
That's it, the connections.
Yeah, and because every school has professors who know somebody.
Exactly.
I mean, RCC had professors who work at MIT and teach at RCC, right? So no matter where you are in your learning journey, just don't stop and just keep learning and learning and learning. And then you're gonna be like, oh, wait, I have enough credits. I actually did get my master's, oh my God, right? Like, and don't be scared about writing stuff either, because I know that that's something that makes folks scared. And but I do think in that process as well, right? It just helps you become a comprehensive thinker, which makes you a stronger stronger leader.
That's really powerful because we tell people all the time that in addition to the academics, the education, it is also about the relationship building, the network expansion, that oftentimes people coming from underrepresented backgrounds, lower socioeconomic status, communities of color, we often lack the network, the connection.
Exactly.
And that's what more affluent folk and certainly white folk have been benefiting from for so long, the relationship.
Can I just say a quick story about that, about the connection? So I get to Emerson College. I mean, and when you talk about out of place, like I had never seen snow. I had never seen like any of that. I was, doing my undergraduate there. I also did a master's certificate there in PR. Anyway, this is my freshman year, like I get there, and my sophomore year, I decided I was gonna start my own nonprofit as an internship. That's a whole nother, do you hear me? But anyway, and so I go out to start Masco. Well, what's the first thing I do? I went to talk to a couple of my political communications professors. Come to find out, like one was like a speechwriter for Kennedy, and then like worked with Gorbachev and like all of this stuff. And like another one was like, also like a part of the whole Russia thing, but was like leading a nuclear freeze and, just this hippy dippy.
Right.
And so they came together to help me think through how to do this. And then because Walt Littlefield, God bless him, he was my, what do you call it? Where like they oversee making sure you're getting your credits, you check in with them.
The advisor?
Yeah, my advisor. Because he was my advisor, he worked it out so that I got up to, in 1 year, I got 16 credits, but I got 12 credits a year to start this nonprofit.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's
Do you know how
awesome.
much that saves you time?
That
saves you
Yes.
life. Wow.
What it allowed me to do was, so by the time I was a junior in college, I had an office at 37 Temple Place in downtown Crossing. And I was working Mass Vote as a full-time job. And then by the time I graduated, Mass Vote was a statewide $1 million organization, and I was able to just run it.
Yeah.
Right, and so it like just goes to show how when you talk about like the connections, like I didn't understand that there was this whole industry of change word. And then I met folks who had connections who could help me, you know, and now I'm meeting George Pillsbury, right? I'm meeting different people who are helping me successfully build Mass Vote.
Yes.
And
That's
it's still around today. So, you know, that's just one example of like the true connection.
Yeah, that's so
Exactly.
powerful.
You know, and it's even, people ask us all the time, like, wow, you know, Leadership Brainer is doing extremely well. And I often tell folks too, you know, we started this while we were in college and in grad school.
Yes,
So
yes.
it does offer a lot of different resources in proximity to folks who are experts in the industry. And so honestly, I would say it's the perfect time to start a company if you're thinking about it.
It's why you're in those academic
No, but it's
institutions.
true, right? Don't
Yeah.
let Mark Zuckerberg
Yeah.
be the only one to do it,
Exactly.
right? You have that access there. Use it, leverage it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like and they want to do it.
Yeah.
They benefit from it, you know, having their students go off and build empires, build institutions that make change for sure. And I just want to circle back because we talked about the benefit of a graduate degree also helping to accelerate one's journey into management level and senior leadership roles in the workforce. So while there are people who are able without graduate degrees to get there, we do see and understand that graduate degrees is an accelerator to
That's
get there. And more people of color need to take advantage of that opportunity to be on an accelerated pathway to leadership and influence. And thereby,
part of that
wealth got
acceleration is the connection.
Exactly, it is. It's absolutely more than anything.
Exactly.
It's not always the knowledge from the books and from what you're taught in the classroom. It is the connection.
It is, right? It's going to, you know, it's doing those different dinner groups or whatever it is.
And you know what that makes me think about? Being a person with a diverse background and showing up as your authentic self, your full self in those classroom spaces, in those institution places. It makes you feel like I have to code switch. It makes you feel like I have to do an environmental scan. It makes me feel like, am I even worthy of building the connection that I need to be on that accelerated pathway? And you are. And without it, you're just stifling yourself, and it's scary. It is daunting.
Well, without it, you'll end up in middle management really angry.
Thank you.
Right? Like, and you know, I'm so glad that you brought up that word authenticity and code switching. And you know what I have found is, this is an old reference, but everyone go out and either read the book or watch the movie The Spook Who Sat Behind the Door.
Behind the door. The spook who sat behind the door.
And I'm not going to do any spoilers, but it's basically a dude who decides he's going to gain skills and then take those skills to liberate his people. It's also a book, so if you want to read it, you can read it. But you know, I think what's important for us to remember is that, like, again, like I'm at MIT Sloan. That's great. You know, I'm so smart. I'm so da-da-da. I'm still a Black woman in this country who may have light skin privilege, right? Who may have education privilege. But if I forget who I am, then I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to represent here. And so what I find is that the reason why it's so important for me to be my authentic self is because my ancestors didn't make sure we survived so that I could be a step and fetch person.
Yeah, come on now. Do you hear me?
Right? Like, do you hear me? Right? Like my mother, right, didn't work 3 jobs as a single mother to so that I wouldn't be myself in space.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so when especially when I'm in rooms when I'm the only one. I am representing brothers and sisters who cannot be here. And guess what? They like to look cute. They like color. They like prints.
Period.
Exactly.
You know, guess what? They laugh, they snap their fingers, they get loud. And guess what? They're smart as hell and you're gonna get your report and it's gonna be dope.
Do you hear me?
Do you hear me?
That's real.
I really appreciate that. I actually just finished up the semester, and the whole
Yes.
semester I thought I was the only woman of color in the class, and it's the last day of class, and a woman walks up to me, she says, in the beginning of the school year, it's a data management analysis class, she said, you asked the professor, but does this data account for people of color? And I said, that was literally the first week of school. How did you remember that? And it was because, and I'm saying this story because not asking that question would have never put it on the horizon of anyone. I don't care who it's stuck with, but it needed to be asked in that place to let my professor know
That's
that
so
this is
powerful.
on my radar.
Yes.
Because that's my authentic.
And that you're not teaching us the full.
You're missing
Exactly.
something.
You're missing some stuff.
And and that's higher education for you.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, the ways that we're maneuvering, and the spook who sat behind the door, that has been iconically referenced in Lovecraft Country, Snowfall, all these shows. That's my vice.
Well, and let me tell you, and I know I hate to say it as someone who hasn't seen any of those shows. But we can do every episode of Insecure.
Yes.
That's what I came up on. And then someone else was telling me that there's a new season of P-Valley, so I got into that too. Like I will get to that too. That's what. But I'm laughing because that's probably the writers, right? Like they're all of my generation and older, and that was a rites of passage. Like I mean, I don't know if y'all still do this, but like in my generation, like if you couldn't say you love Black people and have not read certain books.
Yeah.
And even the people who didn't read them would lie and would have like read enough crib notes
To know how to talk about
to be like,
it.
oh yeah, Frantz Fanon, yeah, great. Like, and that was one of them, right? And it's because it was a revolutionary, a revolutionary story that's important for us to not lose. I don't know if it should ever be remade. If it is, it better be made by like Ryan Coogler. I would like him to direct it. But yeah, so everyone, yes, check that out. But the story you gave is a perfect example of you choosing to show up authentically, and everyone else, including the professor, gaining from it.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why diversifying our classrooms and our boardrooms are so critical and so important, because we're bringing to the table the rest of
That's right.
the community.
What you see. Oh, I know we're running out of time. I'm sorry. Let's go. Well, I was just say this quickly. I got So like they said, meaning all the studies, all the whatever, that women-led teams have an innovation intensity and get 21% more things patent than than male-led teams. And so now that's just an idea of gender diversity, right? But diverse teams ethnically, right? 70% more will enter a new market more successfully, right? And so the stats are here. And the question, and I'm working on a book, y'all. The manuscript. The manuscript is due June 30th. And so it's called From Intention to Impact. But I start the book by asking the question, are we more greedy than racist? Because answering that question is going to let us know if America will continue to lead in the 21st century.
That's powerful.
Because if we are, and I believe we're more greedy than, not everybody, but I believe as a whole, we're more greedy than racist.
Yeah, it's what's driving it.
It's what's driving it.
It's what started in the first place.
Right, and the minute that they could no longer do chattel slavery, they had to find another way. And and 100 years later, we're now here where there's enough of us in power to grow and to expand in all the industries to answer that question.
But it's still too many of us in chattel prison.
Yeah, incarcerated.
Whole nother episode.
Yeah, do you hear me?
And if we want to talk about the economy of of prison slavery, I would love to do that.
Yes.
We can definitely have that conversation. And even as we get ready to wrap up, I just want to note that as you all are thinking about graduate school and your career mobility, to really continue to hone some of the skills that will make you successful in that journey, some of which is thinking about navigational capital, that ability to leverage your experiences to navigate, which many of us coming from underrepresented communities, our lived experience has provided us the skill set to be able to navigate.
We are experts.
We are experts in navigating when we are up against, our backs are up against the wall. So that navigational capital is leverageable as you navigate your careers. Cultural wealth, that same experience also provides and has yielded us a sense of wealth and value that we can bring to the table that makes problem solving even more efficient and effective. We have to leverage that. We got to leverage the ability to step in rooms where we are some of the very few, and being able to get in that environment, scan that environment, get a sense of where things are, where we fit in, and how we can help transform it. We talk about code switching all the time, not thinking about it from a deficit standpoint, but from a place of strength, to be able to go into a place and relate and use language and references that allow us to connect with the people in the room. So these are some of the things that I wanted to make sure we raised before we got out of here today.
Without sacrificing authenticity.
Yes.
Without sacrificing authenticity.
Exactly.
Right? Because we need to be us in order to make the change. And we just being them,
Exactly.
but in brighter clothes and, prettier skin colors.
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Be who you are. Authenticity
I mean,
is
it's
incredibly
not
important.
it's not why we were put here, right? I mean, if you think about all the steps that had to happen for us to be sitting here today with the privilege that we have, who are we to then act like that?
Period. Period. And that is our
acting like ourselves.
Exactly. And it's our obligation to not become the oppressor.
Yes.
So that is the charge that we ensure. Do you hear me? That's not why we are working to transform society. That's not why we're working to transform systems so that we can then become oppressive. We have to continue to stay alert, stay aware, be intentional.
Well, we have to be who we really are, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we are tribal, familial, intergenerational. Like, I don't care what Black or brown culture you come from, there's a saying about if one person can eat, two people can eat, right? Like, exactly, you think about the values that we reaffirm during Kwanzaa. Right? There's very little individualism in those values, right? Because we know that's not how we get ahead, right? Those weren't the stories passed down, or even the stories held on to from the slave ship. Right? Like, we held on to those stories because we knew how important they were gonna make for us to live, to now sit here.
Exactly. Do you hear me?
Ubuntu!
Ubuntu!
So, Malia, let me ask you this one last question. Where can the people find you? How do they wait for your book to come out? How do they stay on top of all the things that you're doing constantly?
Yes.
Yes. So, you do that. I guess the easiest way, I'll just say, is you can follow me on social media at Malia Lazu, MALIA LAZU. That's the socials. You can shoot me an email, malia@theurbanlabs.com. And that's how you can hire us. But you gotta be ready to do the work.
Period.
Because we can recommend a great training organization if that's what you want. But if you actually want to change culture and you want to see it reflected in your P&L, give us a call.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love
Thank
it.
you so much.
Likewise.
Yeah, so my closing thought in next steps, I would say one thing that we must keep in mind when it comes to diversity too is just because you hire a Black person or a Latinx person, if their values are not different from yours as the white person that has continued to perpetuate these oppressive ways, then that's not true diversity. So we need to have different diversity in experience and perspective, diversity in training, all of that when you're talking about diversity. So that's my last spiel. And I would say, make sure you all keep up with Leadership Brainery. So follow us on social media at Leadership Brainery. As Jonathan said earlier, sign up for Dear Future Colleague if you're interested in graduate school.
I'm also about to buy a sweatshirt.
Yeah, can't wait. I love it.
Follow us so you can buy our merch. So you can continue to be a part of our movement.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you all for listening. I know this conversation was a little bit longer than the past ones, but it was worth it. So look out for next month.
Love it. Y'all take care. Do you hear me?
Thank you. All right, we're done.
Awesome.
Thank you. That was so good.
That was so fun. Yes.
Full circle moment.
Full circle.
Full circle.
That was great.